A lot of issues would come up, and with respect to who we should baptize and how this affects how we think about covenants. I think bigger issues are thinking about what we still have in common: one gospel, one Jesus Christ, one focal point in the covenant of grace, the same Spirit working in our hearts. That being said, I think one issue among others comes down to how do we view the relationship between covenant and church. And sometimes the way I hear people say things is because of the strong language of Jeremiah 31. The old covenant had an external administration and an internal saving essence, so not all who are in the covenant were of the covenant. But in the new covenant, they'll all know me from the least to the greatest, and therefore there's a difference. And essence, administration are one and the same. There are several difficulties, because if we quote language like they'll all know me from the least to the greatest, we have to grapple with the rest of the language of Jeremiah 31 also. So, for example, when God says their sins and their lawless deeds I'll remember no more, David also says in Psalm 38 how blessed is the man whose transgressions are forgiven, really 32 and 38. He's not saying how blessed will be the man one day who eventually comes and his transgressions will be forgiven. What he's saying is, I'm the man. My sins are forgiven. My transgressions are forgiven. Jeremiah talks about the Spirit, writing the law in the heart, if you take Jeremiah and Ezekiel together. And yet Isaiah 51 speaks of the remnant in Israel as the people in whose hearts is my law. So there are people with the law in their heart in the Old Testament. Psalm 119 shows us what that looks like. They'll all know me from the least to the greatest. Very few Israelites often knew the Lord in the Old Testament. But I think the right way for us to understand the difference and the contrast between the Old and the New Covenant is really looking at other New Testament and New Covenant passages, like Acts chapter 2. The young men, the old men, the maidens, every class of society, every kind of people coming from all different nations to worship in Jerusalem, all come to know me from the least to the greatest. And if you go back to Jeremiah in chapter 6, he actually says about all Israel, they don't know me from the least to the greatest. And he doesn't mean there's no Israelites who don't know the Lord. He means most of them don't. And so what do we come to when we hear they'll all know me from the least to the greatest? Is this making a promise that all who are in the covenant are of the covenant and there's no hypocrites? No. What he's really getting at is the same thing with the polar opposite phrase, they don't know me. Now, the blessings of God will so far excel that even though few people had sins forgiven, many will. Few people had the law written on their hearts. Now we have more people, and the law written more clearly in the heart, because we see God more clearly in Jesus Christ. And we also see people from the least to the greatest, from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation, knowing the Lord. And this is why we come to Acts 2. Peter can pick up the precise language of the Abrahamic covenant, the promises to you and to your children, and as many as are afar off, whom the Lord our God will call. How could a Jew hear that and not hear Abraham? I will be your God, the God of your children, and the God of the stranger in your midst. And now God is expanding the blessings. So the differences between the Old and New Covenant are relative and not absolute.